Hi, welcome back to the Heretic Sisters. My name is Suzanne. I'm the Hopeful Heretic. I'm interested in exploring all of the frequencies with the hope of revealing something higher than our limited minds can grasp. Questions I'm pondering: what is the truth? Can we both have an individual truth and a shared truth? Is it possible to be an individual within a group? What is our individual versus shared responsibilities? Is shared and balanced equity possible?
Hi, I'm Tatiana, and I'm the Fearful Heretic. I'm all about getting to the bottom of things. I also want to try everything at once. Questions I'm pondering: how does one see reality without distortion? How can we embrace all the blooming complexities of life? How do we express our experiences in creative work? The question, what's it all for, has not left me since my teenage years.
So yes, today we are finally going to talk about projections. And actually this topic came up when I encountered a last minute cancellation for an interview we were going to have. And I also had a projection happening. And it's not the first time, of course. We're 5/1s. We get projections all the time. But I'm always questioning, like, why are these people projecting on me? What's going on? Because the first response is like, what? Why are they seeing this? And what is going on? Am I doing something wrong? And there's a variety of reasons why people project on you. And first of all, I think it's very important that we don't blame others. We have to kind of take a step back and not take things personal. I think that's the gift of human design. But it can also mean that we definitely need to take a step back. And sometimes when people that you know or you've gotten to know start to negatively project on you, it can be a signal that you need to take a step back and you need to kind of come in and go internal and make a decision whether this person is right for you or not. So it was during life circumstances that said, oh my God, we should talk about projections because this is an important topic. And specifically for 5/1s, I think Ross said something about 5/1s, familiarity breeding contempt. And Tatiana and I both have had on our Uranus opposition, the cross of laws is our cross on that particular opposition. And what it's shown me throughout the period that I've been in human design is I've seen all of these things happen to me in real life, which is like, oh, this validates what he said. People start off really thinking that you're great, and then it turns eventually. And so there's a reason I think that Ra talks about these things. And from my own experience, I've had to learn, well, I probably need to take more time to get to know people and to take a, kind of a distance from people and really go slow and see how things develop over time. As a triple split emotional projector, it's really important that we take time to get to know people and to see people's reactions to us, both positively and negatively. And if you can get past the negative projections, then really they're a true friend, I think. Because we all have good parts of us and we all have bad parts of us. And depending on how we're feeling at the moment, we can project things that are internal onto the external. So it's really important, I think, and I don't think people really understand this in human design, is we can't blame the other. We really need to take ownership for ourselves and take ownership for how we're feeling. And eventually, we come to a place where we're clean enough that if we're feeling something from somebody else, it doesn't need to be a blame. We can kind of go internal and check in and say, hey, is this me or is this them? And if it is them, to better understand, what, this person is going through something, I can have compassion for them, but I can also take care of myself. And I can go into internally myself and protect myself. So with that being said, we're going to start with projections. Tatiana, you're going to take the lead.
Okay, so thank you, Suzanne, for bringing this amazing topic to our conversation, because like this is an endless list of experiences in my life, of course, it's the same way as in yours. And I'm really happy to dig a little bit deeper into the topic. But before I start, the best advice is to run as fast as you can since the negative projections are starting. Of course, it's not a friendship advice if you're talking about communication with your friends, but actually, the earlier you run away, the better. So you have to feel the point, the correct point to leave the situation. Okay, that's the joke from my own experience. I paid a lot for it. I cannot escape sharing it now. Okay, so let's start. Maybe you're surprised. Why do we have this alchemist lab on our picture? I tried to find some pictures that remind me of this situation, of this ancient, almost time, 15th century, for example. I imagine it is somewhere in Prague. I love Prague with all my heart. Somewhere deep in Prague center, somebody sits. And why do we have it here? So imagine, if you will, the act of throwing something forward. Yeah, unfortunately, the person on the picture is not doing it, but nevertheless, this simple action of throwing something forward is the root of word projection. That's good to know. The word itself comes from Latin, of course, and the correct pronunciation should be most likely proicere. I consulted to my Latin specialist, my kids. They are unfortunate enough to study Latin language at school. So proicere, most likely, but I also found on the internet proicere, maybe it is more from Italian, and it means to throw forth, to throw something forth before you. But how on earth it all turned to evolve into a complex psychological idea we know today? Now comes alchemy and alchemical beginnings. Our story begins in 15th century, for example. For example, as I said, for example, in Prague. Just picture this slab where a person sits and he is projecting, he's casting a powder onto a molten metal with the hope that the metal would turn into gold. That's how this term was used during this time. They didn't even know how it will develop. And now we see that, the next slide, please, Suzanne. Now, few hundred years later, he comes, our beautiful Sigmund Freud. I'm pronouncing him in a German way, like, let me use at least for good all my suffering from learning German. So here comes Sigmund Freud, and his revolutionary idea of using this term projection, which at the same time was used by Thomas Edison while he was perfecting the movie projector. Yeah, and Freudian idea was to use this understanding of the mechanic of projector work, yeah, to our psychological world. And so he formulated his theory of projection. So it's similar, the way the projector who projects a movie picture to the wall, to the screen, the same way we are transferring the internal content of our psyche to others, to the situations, and that's how we create the movie. That was a genius idea of Freud, even though he was an enormous, he was really terrible in his opinions and actions towards women, as we all know. Yeah, they were his main patients category. Yeah, so he earned a lot of money consulting them, and still he was a misogynist, simply. Yeah, but still he cannot deny he was a genius. Yeah, and this idea, this wonderful turn, and this idea of using this projector mechanics in this situation when we communicate with others, when we see others, when we understand the world using these mechanics. And then we see his daughter. Now the family affair starts. Yeah, this is his daughter, Anna Freud. Here in the middle, she's young, and then he's at the later stage of her life. As maybe some of you know, he was practicing psychoanalysis with her, so he was analyzing her. It was totally incorrect. Like same did Jung with his children. For the nowadays, this kind of practice is absolutely impossible for any kind of psychoanalytical or psychological work. It is like no go. But at that time, it was okay. Still, she developed and she evolved as a really good psychoanalyst, and she developed this conception in the way that she understood that we can use projection as a protective mechanism. So when we want to protect ourselves, when we want to protect some kind of content of our psyche, then we project and assign these qualities, for example, to other person. And that was the next step that she did, developing this idea weiter, further. Okay, Jung. So let's talk about this wonderful person. Let's switch to the next slide, Susan. Yeah. So Carl Gustav Jung. I sometimes I receive him. I understand him as a kind of god. Yeah. That's just because it is impossible to imagine that the one person could bring so many things to the table of the development of our civilization. Yeah, it's absolutely impossible, but he did it. Yeah, he was a person of enormous scope, and I'm truly, we all, I suppose, are truly thankful for his existence in our history. And his idea, his part of developing this idea of projections, that was that, first of all, we all have subconscious that contains some kind of similar material. And he suggested that we all are carrying, so we are all carrying this kind of material that could be similar in different persons, different civilization parts, and so on. And these symbols we project into our surroundings. So it looks like we are all walking and talking movie projectors, casting our inner worlds onto the screen of reality. And his idea was also specific that as we all have more or less similar collection, not similar, so relevant for different groups, of course, and different cultures and so on, but still partially our movies connected to each other. Yeah, and this all creates this complicated picture of reality that we face every day. Then the last addition is Melanie Klein. Such a nice look she has there on these photos. She was a psychoanalyst also. The feature, so I featured her just because her biography is quite interesting. She didn't manage to receive a proper education. Her family was against it. And she didn't manage to study psychoanalysis in Berlin. Like, you have to marry and you have to have children. And so she did. And she had to learn in private way from also famous psychoanalysts in Budapest and so on. And she never had an official degree in psychoanalysis or in psychology. And she had to fight for her ideas just because she had no degree, she was not qualified, she had no medical education, whatever. Yeah. So it was like the attitude towards her was not easy. But still, her ideas and the way she developed the concept of projection was really useful. Even we are using partially this conception nowadays also. So she linked the projection with the early childhood and the mechanics that evolves during our pre-verbal development. Yeah, when we're unable to talk, but we definitely have our feelings, our emotions, and we communicate with our caregiver, like most likely at that time, definitely it is mother. And for the moment, this idea became a really relevant and huge part of modern psychoanalytic thinking. The person tries to expel a state of mind, to break free from a state of mind, projecting it to other person. This is a small addition, but this understanding how it works. So the small child, unable to speak, unable to move, unable to go away from the situation, he's trying to project, to cast away his feelings to the person who's taking care of him. And this difficult mechanics lays under everything like that comes at later stages in our life. And and this could bring the reaction from the person that is involved in projecting. So I project on you, and in accordance with this, you behave the way I project on you. Mm-hmm. So this of trigger, so not a trigger, so this impulse becomes a reality. Let's put it like this. And this is really close to all this energetic understanding of our interaction. Yeah. So I like transfer the energy to you, and then you, so emotional wave, and so you can make a long list of analogies. For example, a man in a rage projects his anger onto his wife. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Whom he now sees as the angry one. I'm thinking like, was I projecting to my mother and seeing her always as an angry one as a child? He insists it is her hostility that stimulated his rage. Yeah. And almost immediately his wife becomes angry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Protective identification exerts emotional pressure that evokes in the other whatever has been projected. So pressure, my emotion is projected on you, the content of my psyche projected on you, all my emotions that are not consumed, not pure, but like really strong in their affective state, and that's it. Whatever. And it evokes whatever has been projected. Like so, it sounds a little bit complicated, but actually, the more you look into it, the more you see that is how it works. So let's say it reminded me about communication between emotional and unemotional person. Yeah, don't you think? So then,
yeah. Oh yeah.
Of course, I give you my emotions, and then you give them back to me. 2 times stronger, yeah.
Even stronger, yeah. That was the dynamic of my mom and me. She had a lot of open centers, and once I noticed all of those open centers, I was like, wow. It helped me understand the dynamic, because really I couldn't get her attention. She had so many children. I couldn't really get her attention unless I provoked her. And then it became this this thing that took on its own life. And so I'd get angry as a teenager, and then, then she'd give me attention, and then she'd pursue me. And so it almost became like a romantic relationship, which I took into my first relationship. And then I was like, this is not going to work. I do not want to live my life like this. And so then I just stopped. I really cut off my emotions from pretty much everything, because I didn't want to go into that same cycle. Now, until I really came into human design and realized that I was an emotional person, then I started to heal that part of myself and not shame myself for that, because there's a lot of shaming in emotional people, and even in the human design community, there's a lot of shaming of emotional people. And I'm like, well, okay, I get that we both have trauma here, but at the same time, you can't live your life blaming other people, because you would just. There's no way that you can live in a world with so many people and blame it on the other person and try to control all of the mechanisms of other people in your life. You would just have to become a hermit, basically. So at some point, you kind of have to learn how to deal with those people that aren't like you and might affect you in negative ways. You can always make choices about who you have in your life as like really good friends, but to blame other people is not a very good productive solution, I don't think.
Mhm. Yeah, it doesn't help actually. But still, I now I'm thinking about my poor mother. She was most likely she has an open emotional center. It is impossible to know the exact time of her birth. So she was the only one in our household, only one an emotional person. There's 3 emotionals, one of which, 2 of which for 3955 channel. Yeah, me and my father most likely, but my sister.
My dad too had that channel.
Yeah. So
he had the 59.6 and the 3955 like my partner does. And so it's very interesting, when you look at the dynamics of your family and what you experience. But I have Chiron on my descendant too. So I, as a pre-verbal kid, watched the dynamics between my parents and then all of the siblings that I had. So I've been dealing with projections for a long time. It's, yeah.
Yeah, so the last few words regarding projection, just a little bit. What do we have nowadays? Yeah, today projection has evolved. Projection has evolved beyond its psychoanalytic roots. Economists, for example, use the term projection bias to describe our tendency to project current preferences onto our future selves. So in the moment, then I project in the future what I would be doing or expecting. Ever bought groceries when you're hungry? That's the projection bias in action. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, the rest is not relevant for the moment. Let's continue into the most interesting part of today. What have you prepared for us, Suzanne?
Well, I would like to also say that projections don't necessarily need to be negative. They can also be positive. So when we project, and I think that's what happens to us as 5/1s, is that we can start off with people projecting on us very positively. And that's kind of the saint projection. And then once people get to know us and we show different sides of ourselves, then it can become very quickly the negative projection. I've seen that play out in real time in my experiment with people that I've gotten to know, that I've gotten close with in human design specifically. And what I will notice, and I always have to pay attention to this about myself, is what we complain about, we eventually project, or we actually eventually you see that come out in yourself. So we really don't like something about somebody else, then I'll see them played out in themselves. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I've seen that play out in so many different ways. So who you are is, you'll be able to see all the various parts of yourself over time. I think it's very important for us to recognize all of these different parts in ourselves. We hide from ourselves a lot. We hide parts, like that's the projection. We hide parts that we don't like. We project it onto other people. And we don't see it in ourselves. We just see it in those other people. And what Gurdjieff called those things that we hide from ourselves, he calls them buffers. It's basically buffers that we put in place to protect ourselves from seeing the negative parts of ourselves, because we all have these negative parts. It's impossible not to have negative traits. And so once the buffers release, then there's a real growth, I think, because then you see, oh, this part of myself that I've been hiding from myself, it's important to see, or I can't move beyond it. I go into the same patterns over and over again because there's parts that are hidden. Okay, so I wanted to, before we go into this, I wanted to understand how Ra got certain profiles, like the, line 2 and line 5. How did he come up with the projection idea of those lines? And this is beyond, the energy type of the projector, which I didn't even consider thinking about. But, I'd love to understand, Tatiana, from your point of view, what do you understand about the energy type of a projector? It's called a projector. What do we do? Are we could we, because if we didn't really know ourselves really truly, could we potentially project things that aren't even true about another person onto that other person rather than really seeing their true, identity? Is that true? Like why do you think he called it the projector energy type?
I suppose it is more linked to the picture of projector who brings a strong light to the person, focus to the other. That's why. So we're like a lightning object. I don't think that. So it doesn't matter if you. So from my point of view, it doesn't matter if you have a parts that you don't understand, or if you don't splitted parts of your yourself. Yeah, that you do not recognize, you didn't heal yet, and so on. Yeah. Anyway, people would be projecting on you. If you are 5'1", we are not talking about projectors at the moment. Yeah? You would receive projections even when you would be healthy, happy, and all the split parts are gathered, and you proceed with your individuation in Jungian's type of in Jungian understanding. Yeah, so you're like grown up person and so on. So I suppose, I don't know, it is a good question why he calls us projectors, but most likely we are projecting our light and taking the other person in focus, the way that generator cannot do, and of course manifestor cannot do, and for reflectors it is also totally another approach. So maybe my opinion is sounds like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I also, from the evolutionary astrologer, Jeffrey Green, he called the moon the ego, and it was the projection of the movie, which I thought is interesting because I have, we both have our moon in the 5th line. And, we have the channel of moodiness. And so depending on what our moods are, people can project certain things on us because, obviously if we're in a good mood and we're feeling great, they see that part of us. And if we're in a bad mood, we're not feeling that great, they can project another part of us. And I thought it was also interesting and different between both of us is that I have, I've been looking at this in myself, I have the moon ruling my midheaven, and Saturn is also ruled by my moon. So a lot of the times the projections I've seen come in are really dependent on how I'm, if I'm feeling in an irritable mood, and I post something on Facebook about, people, selling to me too much or whatever, people will see one part of me. But also I've had some people comment that I remember this from my teenage years too, is that I'm like a mother. You're a mom, and you're saying what you should do or you shouldn't do, which is so funny because Saturn is ruled by my moon, and Saturn is the serious part of me. And I always felt like I was I had to grow up really fast, and I started to want to drink alcohol because of a friend who said, "Oh, you're so much more relaxed when you're drinking." And I was like, "Oh, that's great. I really want them to see me that way because I, can be a bundle of nerves and I can be very serious." So it's interesting how people see and what they see, because the midheaven is really what people see from your career, what people see from the outward of, your status in life, and your ascendant is how people see you right when you walk into the room, when they first are introduced to you. And I have a Libra ascendant. And so sometimes I can come into a room and people are just drawn to me, and they see that really nice, it's ruled by Venus. So they see that nice, wonderful Venus energy that I can give off when they first get to know me. And then over time, they see the different parts of me, depending on my mood. So all of those are very interesting things to understand about how people view you and when and how much. But I really wanted to understand from the I Ching's perspective, like, what is it? How did he get the specific lines projection? So I wanted to talk about this from a couple of different people that I've learned about the I Ching. I'm starting to really learn more about the I Ching. Specifically, I discovered this person who his name is Robin Armstrong, and he wrote actually in the 70s under a pseudonym called Astrologic. He wrote about the degrees of the astrological degrees from the perspective of the I Ching. I think he was probably one of the first people to do that. But then there was this other person, her name was Benabel Wen, and she was on the astrology podcast, and she wrote this book, which I'll show in later in my judgments. And I took a few things from her. She's got a lot of history of the I Ching, and there's a lot of different ways that people actually have practiced the I Ching. There's just so much history to it, and there's its own astrological layering, Chinese astrology to the I Ching over the astrological degrees. So I wanted to really learn about this a little bit more, and I've only just very barely started to dig into this. So I'm no expert by any means, but I've looked at it in a variety of ways, and it's very interesting. I see myself in so many different ways, I think probably because I have an experience of people seeing me in a lot of different ways too. So it's like I can see myself in pretty much any system that you put in front of me, which I think is very interesting, because some people are very secure in how they see themselves, and they only see themselves in the human design system. They don't see themselves in, whatever astrology you put in front of them, whatever different system. They only see themselves one way. And then there are people like me. It's like, well, I can see myself in so many different ways. And it's probably the 5-1 aspect of us, because we have so many ways that we're projected upon. But in the I Ching, basically, in any cycle, there are two extremes. One half of the cycle moves toward darkness, and the other half moves toward light. Daylight is either increasing or decreasing. And so it's, basically the yin and the yang, and how they interplay together. And I just wanted to read a couple of things to highlight here. Is under the I Ching cosmology, every function of the universe is a particular combination of yin and yang energies. And that particular combination of yin and yang make up an object's chi, or life force. The two fundamental components of this binary mathematically combine with each other to form 4 patterns. When the combination is of yin and yang polarities coming to a union, it's in motion, moving towards growth, and is therefore younger. Once it has changed past tense into a plenary status of itself, it has matured and is therefore the elder. So I wanted to look at it from this perspective. This is how I'm understanding the projection part, which is basically the hexagrams are made up of 2 related trigrams. And so the top 3 are what you call above, and the bottom 3 are what you call below. And there are ways that you read the lines or the hexagrams based on this above-below type of arrangement. And then you have the difference of above, the in-between. So above is the 5 and 6, the in-between is 3 and 4, and the below is 1 and 2. And this is very important. Above. In the upper trigram, line 6 is above, line 4 is below, and line 5 is in between. And the same thing with the bottom, below. In the lower trigram, line 3 is above, line 1 is below, and line 2 is in between. But how they look at line 2 versus line 5 is very specific, and they call these places. They don't call them lines, they call them places. So place number 2, and this is specifically from Robin Armstrong's book on the I Ching. He has several different books in one that he's come out with over time. I actually bought the full bundle.
Mhm.
Very fascinating the way he's put in together so many different astrological. He's done basically what Ra has done, but in a less practical way. I wonder what profile he is, because all of his materials are very interesting, but they're not as practical as what Ra put together.
Mhm.
Place number 2 is at the middle or central position in the lower trigram. It is an even numbered line, and it is supposed to be passive and receptive. It is considered to be the prince or wife with limited status, who must be receptive and to listen well to advice from the emperor from the heavens above. The second place is sensitive to the needs of those close by and is still the subject of the emperor in the 5th place. So the 5th place is higher in status. So when they say, line 2 or the profile with line 2 is basically they're kind of in the house doing their own thing. And then some people say, I see something in you. And whether that's true or not, I see something in you. Won't you come out and service me, basically? I want you to do this thing for me. And then they may be able to do it or not. And line 5 or place 5 is the central place of the upper trigram. It represents the man in a higher position, closer to heaven and above, and influencing the world below. This is an odd numbered place. Strength and firmness are appropriate. This is the place of the ruler or the emperor. And that's basically what Ra got, when he talks about, the 5th line being, the person, the savior, the general, basically. You can save us. Now, whether that's true or not is up to, the projection. But that's basically the 5th line is basically out there, and they're projecting confidence. A lot of actors have this line. They're projecting something about themselves that make people see something. They're doing something that make people see something in them. Now, they might be doing something for another reason. Like they might be like doing their song and dance to somebody else, and another person sees them and says, this is what I want you for. And they're like, who are you? And why are you, why are you seeing this? I don't like, I was just thinking about it from a specific point of view of like a romantic situation. Say you're like, oh, I really want to put on my best self for this person that I like. And then somebody that you don't even like comes in and starts.
I think a really bright example of the situation. Can I interfere? Just
please.
So it was a situation, the typical, I call it now typical 5-1 situation. So I was doing, it was 2006, let's say. I was in a team of a jazz festival and we were preparing intensely. And there was a subcontractor there who was taking care of production side of the event. And as our office was around the corner from a good cafe, and I was, because I've spent hours and days in this office, I was trying to escape as often as possible. And it's nice reason to meet the subcontractor partner in our team and to talk with him with a cup of coffee. So I said, like, okay, let's go and sit there. Coffee is nice. It's like cakes are tasty and so on. And so we are sitting there, like in the beginning of our conversation. So my plan, definitely, I know what I was planning. My plan was to discuss how he plans to build the state, blah, 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 doesn't matter. Yeah, so production stuff, like how do we prepare our event the best possible way, and the costs involved. It is like we had to pay him in end effect. Finally, quite a big sum of money and so on. So I do not even remember. So of course I wore some makeup or like, but my intent, like I was starting to discuss these topics with him. It is like quite important. International partners are coming. Like you do not want to spoil everything. Like in 2 weeks you have to present. You have to be ready. And suddenly he starts to like almost shout, not shout, he's like a polite person generally, like talking loudly to me, like, Tanya, I'm really happy with my family and with my wife. I'm really happy in my family life. I was like, I even forgot to breathe, because I know when I'm trying to be nice, to start a romance. He was really a really beautiful person, and he was. You can make some fantasies, but everybody knows he's happy in his family life and he's busy. Yeah, he's occupied. He's booked. But he felt it like I'm trying to seduce him, and he felt it clearly. Yeah, like that was shock. Somehow I managed to continue the conversation, but it was like, this is. I suppose it is a classical 5-1. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I've had so many people do that to me. And sometimes, because I don't want to make people feel bad, that I'm always thinking, like, people don't understand this. I'm always thinking about the other. And especially when it comes to men, I have a soft spot for them. And sometimes I'm rude. If I feel like they're being if they're jerks or whatever, I'll be rude. But if they're nice, and I don't want to hurt their feelings. And so sometimes I'll like play along with them because I don't want to hurt their feelings. And I've had to really learn about that, because that'll put you in a position that you don't want to be. And then you have to figure out how to get out of that position. Mm-hmm. So God, I felt that so much in my life. And sometimes I'm like, well, what do I feel? Like, I'm always like, because a projector, we don't understand ourselves sometimes, especially triple splits. Mm-hmm. We're like, well, am I feeling that? Do they pick, like, there was a woman actually, that I had an experience with, and she started having a crush on me. She was married. I'm not a lesbian. And I started to feel like this thing from her. And she even admitted, she was like, oh my God, you felt something coming from me. And I started going like, is it me? Is it what's going on? Mm-hmm. And it totally, I don't know if you've experienced that, but it totally warps your I don't know, like, trust in yourself. Like, is it me? What am I doing to do that? Do I feel this way? I don't know if you question yourself as much as I do, but it's
so a question is, in that situation that I told you, like, I was absolutely sure, like, he is a nice person. I could make some fantasies, but it was clear, and the context was like, it was too expensive to make mistakes in this situation for me, like financially expensive for all the projects. Yeah. So I had no time for flirting.
Did you tell him? You're like, no, this isn't what I'm doing. Like, did you tell him? Did you confront it?
So somehow I like swallowed it and said, like, let's continue to the business part. Yeah. So that times I was like, well, yeah, so probably it would be more appropriate to say, like, why are you hurting me like that, projecting on me, blah blah blah. But now when I'm older,
yeah. Yes. That's the thing, because you probably at the moment were like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what this person is thinking. Yes. And there's sometimes there's a specific projections like that, like just this recently. I was like, this is not me. And no matter what you're sensing, it's not me. I was feeling great at the moment. There was nothing that was going on with me. So I knew it very clearly. But there are other moments that but I still questioned. I was like, what is going on? Why is this person so negative all of a sudden? Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's very interesting. I wanted to also read this other part, because she talks about I think this is very, an amazing thing that she talks about, because Ra also talks about the keywords in this way, and how if you just understand the keynotes and you talk to people with keynotes, they kind of take it in as if it's something that they recognize and is a part of them. So she says, per Xiaoyang's philosophy, the myriad things are determined by numbers and archetypes that predate the Taiji, meaning numbers and archetypes that predate the creation of the universe. Even before the Tao split itself to produce heaven and earth, there were numbers and archetypes. The archetypes are the 64 hexagrams. These numbers and archetypes carry on in humanity's heart. The Chinese of antiquity believed that thoughts, logic, reasoning, and calculations come from the heart, or what often is designated as the heart mind. An unconscious understanding of divine truths lay buried deep within every human's heart mind, a residue left over from procreation times. And we recognize and we reconnect with that understanding through numbers and archetypes. This focus on innate knowledge of pre-creation times deep within the human heart mind leads to the Plum Blossom School to work primarily with the Fuxi's early heaven Bagua rather than the more popular King I Ching, that the later heaven is who she's talking about. The concept of cyclical patterns of the Tao was a great point of emphasis for Xiaoyang. These cyclical patterns were what reconciled time, space, numerology, and astrology, all of which he believed were accounted for in the 64 hexagrams. Per Xiaoyang, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, time can be categorized into 9 periods. The ancient word fen, though translated to minute, was closer to the equivalent of 4 or our current minutes. Chen, the ascendant hour, is an astrological measure of approximately 2 hours. And then she said something that I thought was really interesting when we talk about the prophecy, basically. She says, every 360 years, humanity will undergo a revolution that overturns the status quo. So every 360 years is basically, prior to your current year was the year geopolitical events set a causal wave rippling into the current year's resulting events. It's almost like the procession, you know, this, and I've heard this talk about like the age of Aquarius has sub-ages, and it's like a wave that happens. And every 360 years, something happens which overturns the status quo. And I was thinking about that as it relates to the Pluto return. It's not exactly 360 years. The Pluto return in the US is 248 years specifically. But I was thinking, well, what is 360 years from today's date? And it's actually when Pluto will enter Gemini, which is England's. It's 125 years from now will be 360 years. It was 1660, the last 360 years. And Pluto in England will have its 6th Pluto return when Pluto goes into Gemini at 21 degrees Gemini, 2148. I thought that was interesting because I'm like, oh, well, we're seeing something happening right now, and it might take a further 125 years before, I mean, I don't know why I want to relate it to England, but the US is is part of England, you know what I mean? And so what's happening right now in the Pluto return, we're starting to enter a new phase where we might not be the power, depending on what's happening, and it might transfer to some other country. Some people predict China. We don't know specifically, but I thought that was interesting, and especially in relation to the whole philosophy about this new age and how we're going extinct and all of these things. So that was it as far as I wanted to talk about the I Ching. And then we can, didn't mean to do that. We can talk about it from the human design perspective. I already kind of teased this part, which is, the 5th line is universalization. And we have the 5-1 and the 5-2. And the 5 is the personality side. So we're very conscious of this, this projection that we're putting out, like putting on some, stage makeup like you did, maybe you put something on makeup wise because you were going to your favorite place and it was, your mind was in something completely different than that person had in mind. You put on some makeup, you put on your costume, but this person thought and personalized that costume was for him and was like, "Ooh, she's putting on lipstick. That's for me." And you're like, "Exactly not." And then the 2 is on the lower end of the of the totem pole. I don't mean to say that, but it's like, it's not universalization. It's the lower trigram. So specifically with people with the 2-5, they're on their personal destiny theme. So it's not this transpersonal karma. So they're, coming in unconsciously universalizing something. And that's how people, and then the projection on the 2 side is just that people project that they have something that they can deliver for them, but it's not necessarily something that they universalize. And I wanted to point out in, the projected channels, you see that most of the body graph is basically projected.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? Yeah. It means that people, a group of people, and also specifically when Ra talks about logic is basically a group of people have decided that it's true. They've come together. It reminds me of my family. I have 9 brothers and sisters, and they used to gang up on people. We used to gang up on, like it only takes 2 other people to gang up on the third. And so I saw this cycle in my family that would happen, whereas, they would gang up on one person, and then that person would be the devil. And then later it would be another person being the devil, and the other people would gang up on them. So it can be quite harsh, I think, when this happens, when people form together as a group and say, this is true about you. I see this pattern in you, because it can be true and it cannot be true, at the same time. So a lot of what we have in our body graph is basically people projecting this pattern onto you. Could be true, could be not true. You have to kind of decide for yourself. But I thought that was interesting. So yeah, that's about it. What do you think, Tatiana?
Don't you think that in this case of projected channels, it goes more in the direction of recognition, and that you're recognized for being able to handle this energy in a certain way?
Yes, it's recognition. It can be both good and bad, though. Like people can decide that they're recognizing you for some talent, for sure. But it can be equally as bad, a bad recognition of something that people have that they don't like.
Yeah, of course. And this picture reminded me again, like this crazy feeling that nobody sees me fully in my life. That's what I felt always, even when I didn't meet human design, this line 5,
Yeah.
hiding himself behind the window. Nobody sees me the way I am. Maybe you, I hope, because you are like really similar to me. We are sisters. Yeah, that's all I have to add.
Yeah, I mean, it's very true. I'm married to 5-1, and it's been interesting journey with him. I think that it's a difficult dance that we do with people, even when they're very close to us, and feeling like nobody can really. It's hard for me to understand how other people feel. You feel it. I think to a certain extent, like Ross says, we're all alone. We can relate to people and feel compatible with people for a certain amount of time, but can they ever get inside of us? But I think specifically for 5-1s, it can be isolating and feeling like we just are, like you said, we're just kind of looking. And I think from experience, because we do become paranoid, I do definitely have started to feel like, what does this person want? It's so funny. Like, even if they share something, I'm like, why are they sharing something of mine? What do you want from me? It's always like that. And I feel like really blessed about it, but I'm like, okay, well, there's got to be a reason for them, and it's sad, because we do feel paranoid at times, and do feel like we need to keep our distance, because the projections can turn on you, for sure. All right. Okay. Astrology. So Tatiana wanted me to bring in astrology. She's like, well, how does it relate projection to astrology? And at first I was like, what? I don't know. And then I was like, oh, duh. And then I was like immediately knew. So the 12th house, and people relate the 12th house to Pisces as the natural 12th house ruler. And so you could have planets in Pisces that are not even in the 12th house, but the 12th house specifically is what they call hidden enemies. And a lot of people who are celebrities or political people have a lot of 12th house planets. And so people project a lot, of course, onto those people. And so I thought that was interesting because we do have a lot of Pisces in us. And for me, I know we have different ways that our houses are formulated. But for me, I have Pluto in Libra, which is another, the Libra is the 7th house. So it's the projection of the other. And so Libra can also be, and I have that on my ascendant, you have it on your midheaven. So it's basically enemies that you know about, that's what they call the 7th house, but it's your relationships. And I feel like I've been dealing a lot with these projections and understanding them because I have Chiron right on my descendant, which is near the 7th house, which is considered in the 7th house. So basically, you've got this Pisces, which is hidden, the hidden parts of you. I have Pluto and Libra here. So it's kind of double whammy, where fate kind of takes over and people kind of assume things about you, or they have like reasons they don't like you. And you're just like, well, what's going on? Why don't they like me? And what's happening? So that could be, Pisces or the 12th house related. And then Libra is like, where how you feel about the other, how you project on the other, and what your relationships are like. And we both have prominent Libras in our angles. So that's true. And we both have Pluto and Libra. I think your Pluto and Libra is actually in the 11th house, which is also, a group house. So it's basically how a big group of people see you. Is ruled by Aquarius. But those are the two houses that I would say, and Libra and Pisces, planets in Pisces and planets in Libra. Is funny because people think about Libra, they're like, are they manipulators? Are they just very good at diplomacy and all these things? And that depends on your point of view. I mean, for me, having the Libra ascendant, for me, when I think about that, I'm like, well, I moved around a lot. I had to adjust to a lot of different people and personalities to survive. And so for me, it's like, it's natural for me to to adapt to other people very easily. And that's also kind of a Libra, trait. Could somebody see that as being manipulative? I surely, in my time to be safe, have been extra nice to people. Is that manipulative? I don't know. I'm trying to protect myself. So I'm going to act in a certain
reaction.
way.
Yeah, it's a forced type of reaction to the stress, or to the challenge, not fight, flight, or whatever. You're trying to be nice.
Yeah, it's called fawning. Yeah, I remember that and going, oh God, is that what I'm doing? My uncle was a violent person, and I remember having to spend one summer with him. Okay. He was violent verbally. He never struck anybody violently. He was just very violent verbally to his mother. And I was in the house with her, and she was, she had actually a violent husband too, an alcoholic husband. But I remember I really had to just adapt to him, specifically because I knew that he had the 3955, but the 1222 as well. And he was a manifestor. And I was like, I knew I had to, he was a very beautiful person when he was in good mood. But once he became in a bad mood, forget about it. You had to stay clear of him. And I feel like that's kind of the moment where it's like, okay, I know how to keep myself safe, and that's what I'll do. I'll act nice to keep myself safe.
Yeah, I know what I will. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So let's move on to charts. So I wanted to look at a variety of projected profiles, and we started. I found this guy who basically has the same chart as we do. He's a little bit more closer to me because he's got hope motivation, and you've got fear motivation. So he's more closer to me. But it's so funny. He was known for his hairstyles. He's a basketball player. Mm-hmm. He was known for his hairstyles. And basically, he was one of 6 children. He has the same hope motivation and anti-theist direction. He was one of 6 children in a devout Mormon family, but he never embraced the religion. And his father played basketball, and that's how he got into basketball. But he was known in the NBA for his peculiar hairstyles, which I thought was funny. It included a mohawk, a single ponytail, a man bun, and a bald head. And then they said KU fans were enamored with his hustle and his weirdness. He grew mutton chops and painted his fingernails for games. It was a precursor to his NBA career when he was nicknamed the Butcher.
Oh, good.
Isn't that funny? 22. That's what they call the Butcher, our son. And Samurai Scott for his wild hair and physical play. He became larger than life iconic guy around Lawrence, said former KU guard Greg Hurley, who played with Pollard and hosted one of his recruiting visits. He was a personality no one saw coming. And then he said, family values were part of his upbringing in the Mormon church. He's not religious, but Pollard looks after his loved ones. Very loyal we can be. He bummed rides for 3 years at KU before finally purchasing a rusty 1969 green drop top Cadillac that he nicknamed Marvin. Lawrence locals might have seen the car as one of his jokes, but at $900, it was actually all he could afford. He sent federal Pell Grant money to his mother during the season. He also sent her cash she earned in the summer by working basketball camps or washing golf carts. But later in life, he was on The Survivor. He was an actor in some movies. But later in life, actually this year, he had a heart transplant. And so it was interesting because he wrote this. He says, ever been on a heart transplant list and then have someone say you're faking it? It's super weird. Have a nice Wednesday, everyone. This photo is from a while back when I was in the emergency heart center, keeping my fake story straight. I'm home now waiting for a donor. He did get a donor this year at age 49. It's a genetic disease that an infection started wreaking havoc on him because his father died very young too. So I just wanted to look at his chart, but it's basically our chart, and it's got some differences closer to my design than your design. But he has a Scorpio rising, so it's in between us because you have a Sagittarius rising and I have a Libra rising, and so it kind of mixes up things because he's got Mars rules his chart, and Mars is in elevation. It's an elevated and Capricorn, but it's also a planet in contention with Saturn. So it's kind of similarly in the 3rd house, 9th house, like his is. So the religion, him not relating to his religion is very central to kind of his rebellion. But at the same time, he's got this Mars and this the Mercury right on his IC, which has helped him become this great basketball star. Although he was limited in his stardom because he had a lot of injuries and then he had this heart attack. But he also, has a different descendant from me. It's ruled by Venus, and he has a woman in his life. They met while they were married, so it's not perfect. But he's got this woman that he had an experience where she had cancer, and he nursed her through it. And then he's had this heart problem, and she's nursing him through it. So they seem to be a good couple. But it's like, you see all of these when I analyze my chart and I'm looking at your chart versus another person's chart, you can kind of see the subtle differences where we each have kind of our strengths and very subtle differences in how it plays out. He's got a Leo midheaven. So his sun in, Aquarius makes him different, but he's also a star. That's what made him a star is his personality. basically his 5-1. Okay. Didn't want to spend too much time on him because he's like our twin. Okay. Miley Cyrus. So I wanted to bring her in because she's a 2-5. And I saw some things that were very much, emphasizing her 2 line. She said, having every day the relationship between you and other humans being subject and observer isn't healthy for me because it erases my humanity and my connection. Very 2 line oriented. And without my humanity and connection, I can't be a songwriter, which is my priority. And then over here, she says, I love performing, but pretty much for them, her team, like singing for hundreds of thousands of people isn't really the thing I love. She's 2 line. So she's a little bit of a hermit. There's no connection. There's no safety. It's not natural. It's so isolating because if you're in front of 100,000 people, then you are alone. And she's said in British Vogue, and after she heard her fans' heated reaction, she's like, this has nothing to do with a lack of appreciation for the fans and everything to do with the fact that I simply don't want to get ready in a locker room, which is the reality of life on the road. So basically, she had to take a stand on everybody's projections of her and, take a stand that was a little bit more, for herself and her personality, which is a 2 line. But looking at her design, I think is very interesting because you see that she's got a sun right on and Mercury right on the descendant. So that's where the Libra house is. And she's basically has been, this famous star. But I wanted to read a few things about her. She was from a celebrity family. Her dad is Billy Ray Cyrus. And so she came in as being a child star. And then she turned it into, her successful musical career as an adult. But she's a cross of sleeping phoenix, just like her dad is. But her dad is a 3-5. So she was like, my dad really gets a lot because he wasn't brought up in the way that I was brought up, where I was brought up with a lot of confidence. He was brought up in a place where he didn't feel confident and he had to go out and feels love from the crowd, 3-5. And so they're both on the cross of sleeping phoenix, but he has an open G, a completely open G. So for him, it like gets connected and he's got a lot of 7th house planets. She doesn't have too many, but she definitely has, these 8th house planets, which were interesting because she's got Venus and Uranus and Neptune all lined up. So it contributes to the ways that she shows up, which is she came out to her mother at the age of 14 and has said, I never want to label myself. I'm ready to love anyone that loves me for who I am. I am open. In June 2015, Time magazine reported she's gender fluid. She was quoted as stating that she doesn't relate to being a boy or a girl, and I don't have to have my partner relate to being a boy or a girl. She says she's literally open to every single thing that is consenting and does not involve an animal, and everyone is of age. She's a big supporter of the LGBT community. So she's a wild child, that and Uranus conjunction. She's also, I was learning about these, a traditional technique called planets in Munakara, which are planets in contention. So she is what you would call a day chart. So day charts are people who are much more extroverted because their sun they were born when their sun was above the horizon. So they tend to be more extroverted people. And certain planets are what they call diurnal or nocturnal. And when you have a nocturnal planet, you can get them into a state of contention, they call it. Now it just depends on like 3 planets in motion. It's kind of complicated to talk about it, but she has Jupiter, which is a day planet, in her 5th house of creativity. It's ruled by this Venus here, which is in Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, which is at the top of her chart. But Jupiter in Munakara is basically extremes in fortune, from poverty to great wealth or vice versa, or a sudden rise in fame or notoriety. truth-seeking at all personal costs. So these are all descriptions that they could, tendency toward physical, social, or financial risk-taking, strong desire for freedom, intense or unusual philosophical leanings, a need to walk their talk, a sense of superiority, or narcissistic behavior. So those are all things that could be true or not. And she was, I thought I'm going to end with this. Leo Lebovitz at Tablet noted in 2013, talking to the website Hunger, the singer argued that those adults who deem her gyrations too sultry and her music too saccharine were simply too ancient and Jewish to get it. That was a weird thing to say. With magazines, with movies, it's always weird when things are targeted for young people, yet they're driven by people that are like 40 years too old, Cyrus opined. And one group stands out in her mind as deserving the most of the blame. It can't be like this 70-year-old Jewish man that doesn't leave his desk all day telling me what the clubs want to hear. So I think she's probably talking and making some generalization at that time, because there were a lot of writers and people that controlled the media that were older, and they could have been Jewish. I don't know. I'm not going to talk about specifically, but basically at the time, with the whole media, those were the people that were making these judgments. And she knew for herself, like it says, she is a truth seeker, and she knew for herself that this was a thing that she needed to do, and she was connecting with her audience. And the results show she's gotten a pretty amazing audience, and she's done amazing things.
She has a pretty wild reputation at the same time. And Paris Hilton is smoking somewhere around the corner. When we try to compare her with Miley Cyrus, but she's a nice singer, by the way. Like, first I read a lot on somewhere, some yellow publications or whatever, like there's a flower you notice. But then when you hear a song, she's like extremely talented person, no doubt.
She's definitely versatile. I've seen her do a lot of different things, like a good projection type of person. What do you think about her chart? Is there anything you want to point out? She's got the 15 channel of extremes, or the gate of extremes. Is there anything else?
So like integration. That's what I like. I like to see integration in people, and she is also an hour breaker, 659. She's like, yes, that's her energy. Now one sees it, like you notice it immediately. So so her wildness, and the 3420 in the incarnation cross that makes her really strong. She knows herself. A lot of strength in her body graph. And
nice. She's got her moon in gate 14 power.
This is conscious, and the sacral is defined. Unfortunately, not like in our body graph. But
I know.
But she's like really, truly resourceful.
It's interesting. Her spleen is open, or her undefined.
And ego.
So her feelings of being out on the road and having security be very important to her, and the personal connection being very important to her, that makes sense. And not wanting to feel the pressure, with that undefined root center of all of the people. And she seems to have a very healthy ego, but she definitely doesn't have that defined either, with that 26 and the 45 hanging.
But it tells a lot about the way about her upbringing. So it's nice. She had parents. She has parents like this. Because a person with open ego and open spleen, you could expect anything.
And
any kind of traumatization in early childhood.
And her nodal direction is similar to ours. It's not in the same gates, but the south node being ruled by Mercury, which is right. Like I said, she's a singer in her childhood star, and then her north node. It's basically on the cusps of these houses. So it's basically she came it's second house, eighth house. So she came in with these values, these very strong values, and understanding of herself. And she's kind of going into the eighth house, which is, can be a house of having to lots of different partners, taking more risk taking in partnership, other people's money, the sexuality that she has in the second eighth houses can be a lot of experimenting with different types of sexual partners, with Venus and Uranus there. But it's, a lot of risk taking. Jupiter rules that. So that's her plan and contention. But that's really an integral part of her and her experience. So, yeah. All right. The last person that I wanted to bring to the table was Elon Musk. And he's a 3-5. And I had personally gone from, oh my God, is it the greatest thing? I was like, because I was in tech, and I used to just like look up to him so much and be like, oh my God, he's such great. He had such great press. He had for a very long time, everybody was just treating him like he was the angel incarnate. And I think most people know him as, this person who has become increasingly controversial, especially since he's bought Twitter, which he's called X. I wanted to read a couple of things about him. I think most people know his history, but he's a businessman and investor known for his key roles in the space company SpaceX. He has a thing for X. And the automotive company Tesla. Other involvements include the ownership of X Corp, the company that operates the social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter, and his role in the founding of the Boring Company, Neuralink. He is one of the wealthiest individuals of the world, and he has expressed views that have made him a polarizing figure. He's, been very much vocal about censorship and being able to say what you want, and very negative about the press and, the press kind of controlling everything. And yet he's kind of taken over and has done the same things that he complains about. And then he's had misleading statements, misinformation, they say. I don't want to belabor that. But he's, sorry. Oh yeah. Okay. So he's, oh no, so that's Miley. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to find my notes. Okay. Yeah. So he's, he's promoting right-wing conspiracies, they say. And, his family's wealthy. He, despite, he basically had his parents divorced when he was young, and he went to live with his father. His father's name is Errol, and he was part owner of a Zambian emerald mine. And he basically had a falling out with his father. And Elon has recounted trips to wilderness school that he described as a paramilitary Lord of the Flies, where bullying was a virtue and children were encouraged to fight over rations. So that kind of formed him. And we'll look at his chart in a minute. That really helps understand his different stances. But basically, he had an incident at school where he had an altercation with a fellow pupil, and Elon was thrown down a concrete steps and beaten severely by the boy and his friends, leading to him being hospitalized for his injuries. Elon described his father berating him after he was discharged from the hospital, saying, "I had to stand for an hour as he yelled at me and called me an idiot and told me that I was just worthless." And Errol denied berating Elon, but claimed the boy had just lost his father to suicide and Elon had called him stupid. Elon had a tendency to call people stupid. How could I possibly blame that child? After that incident, Elon was enrolled in private school. And then he has at least 12 children. He's impregnated a lot of women. And he's basically, he has had, one of his child is transgender, which he's basically disowned. And he, one of the things that he said about his child was, she no longer wanted to be associated with him, but Musk blamed the estrangement of his daughter on what the Financial Times characterized as the supposed takeover of elite schools and universities by neo-Marxists, and has said that her gender transition is primarily what sparked his drive to destroy the woke mind virus, he calls it. And he said, Jordan Peterson's podcast, who's another 5-1 manifester, Musk said that he lost his son essentially because of gender affirming care. He commented, they call it dead naming for a reason. The reason it's called dead naming is because your son is dead, and went on to state that his eldest twin is dead, killed by the woke mind virus. In Vivian, his son's new identity as a woman, responded publicly criticizing Musk for lying about her and the circumstances of her transition, claiming that Musk was cold, quick to anger, uncaring, and narcissistic, whose infrequent visits commonly involved him berating her for being feminine. So I thought it was interesting.
What a person. What a mess. What a mess.
So the reason why I brought him in was, again, this presentation that I watched about planets being in Munakara, because he has some, and he is actually fear motivated. So I thought this was interesting that he said, I wouldn't say I have a lack of fear. In fact, I'd like my fear emotion to be less because it's very distracting and it fries my nervous system. So I thought that was very specifically interesting. And then he also has Jupiter in Munakara, like Miley. So it can be extremes in fortune, again, from poverty to great wealth, or vice versa, sudden rise in fame or notoriety, truth seeking at all personal costs, tendency towards physical, social, or financial risk taking, strong desire for freedom, intense or unusual philosophical leanings, a need to walk their talk, a sense of superiority or narcissistic behavior, which is funny because his daughter called him that, or his son called him that, uncaring and narcissistic. But he also has a Mars in Munakara. We both have Mars in Munakara too. And Mars in Munakara acts as a strong catalyst for social change, sometimes born from violence, war, disaster. Personal history of being used or abused by others in control or power. Personal challenge that requires bravery or courage. A projection for others in society to love or hate. Sensitivity to betrayal or a battle beyond one's means. Highly competitive individuals who often strive against great odds. Periods of destruction and rebirth. Challenges to strength, resilience, and vitality. So if you look at his chart, it's a really interesting chart. So he has Mars here in the 8th house beside his North Node, and it's ruled by Saturn in the 11th house. And Saturn is ruled by his Mercury, which is communication in Cancer. And so basically he's got this, this contentious, a desire and need. It's on his North Node to do something that is, that requires, in his mind, bravery or courage. And so it's beyond what other people think. And it's geared at it's geared at 8th house things. So other people, he's risk taking basically with other people's money, is Mars in this 8th house. And then he's got Jupiter in, he's a day chart again. He's got Jupiter in the 5th house, and it's ruled by Mars. And so basically Jupiter is kind of a destructive force in his chart. And at some point he might go through a fall in his wealth and, kind of where he's headed right now, if things don't go right for him with Twitter, because he's losing a lot of money from his investors. And so basically his, Mercury is out there causing a lot of people to be angry at him because of the things that he says. But to him, he's got a personal destiny, 3-5, to really make a difference. And that's what drives him. But he's got Saturn here, and it's ruled by Mercury in the 11th house of other people, the groups and peers and Twitter. And you see he's got the Sun and Venus in the 12th house. So projections of other people and hidden the 12th house is hidden. So, whatever his financial dealings and relationships are in a hidden house, which is actually trine to Mars. So in the presentation that I was attending, they were like, that's going to come to bite him eventually, is what he's been doing now. It could all crumble down around him. But we'll see. We don't know what's going to happen to him. But looking at his chart, he's at the cross of service. So he's got the judgment channel. Do you want to say anything else, Tatiana, about his human design chart?
Yeah, so judgment channel, it's important. The first thing I noticed actually is Pluto. I love Pluto for telling the truth in body graph. Yeah, so he has his Pluto in gate 6 kind of conflict. He needs this friction and he creates it constantly. That's what he needs to thrive. I don't know, like that. And the way he behaved himself when we see 18 and 5th line as his design Earth, like he has to be crazy. That's his way. Like he sometimes he makes that impression. Doesn't matter. The person who has 18.5 in Pluto, like you and me, what else could we add here? Yeah, but when you see that this configuration he has even in his design Earth, like congratulations, guy. And this 58 is his personality Earth, so maybe it's interesting. And 52 in his Sun, the gate 52. So like actually, it is bad. He cannot keep his mouth shut, and he cannot stop moving. But actually, it is better for him to be
still,
to be there, to be still. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they say his drug use has gotten him, and he apparently doesn't sleep. But look at his design North Node and his Mars are both in 49. 49, our sun, the 49.5, which is interesting, to kill or be killed.
Oh God, yeah. So like revolutionary. Oh, so and he has 48.3 in Comunicado. Yeah, is it in Comunicado? Yeah, it should be.
Yeah.
So definitely, you see that this is a quite a strong person. Yeah, but with some problems. Let's put it like this. Yeah, with some internal problems that can be.
His design Mars is in a gate of struggle, and his personality Mars is in 49.3, discontent. So he's rousing people toward this, discontent and taking advantage of people's struggle for a revolution. And no matter what you think, if it's a good revolution or not, he's taking advantage of that situation.
Using the revolutionary situation, yes, of the how to say this, when this nation inclines towards revolution, he is ready to ride the wave, of this.
Yeah.
Is it bad or good? Tell me. Who knows?
We don't know. I mean, he's, he's taking the movement where it goes, and depending on who wins, I think it's going to either play out well for him or not. And maybe it'll still play out well for him despite that. But I think depending on who wins the White House and how Twitter goes, I think he's going to have some consequences for that, for sure.
Well, where do you see in his body graph his conservative, quite conservative points of view, like the situation with his son? It's unimaginable. I didn't know it exactly. Yeah, I didn't know that is a huge minus.
Well, he has an undefined G center, right? So he can kind of fit. He has been a Democrat in the past. It's not like he has always been right leaning. I think some of his personal experiences, people say his drug use, have warped him, but I think his personal experiences, I think this is what I think. It's the I Ching, basically. And the I Ching is like cycles. So people can be at a high end of the cycle, and then, like P. Diddy, what he's been going through, he was the P. Diddy controversy, I mean, you can be the best person in the world, and then your arrogance gets the best of you. And then, other people's ideas and what they feed you gets you. He had a lot of struggles with, what he was trying to do from, the powers that be. And I'm sure he's had some negative experiences of that. And also, I think, like I said, I think in my, it was in my Saturn opposition video on my other channel, it's basically like people have reactions to things that change them, their struggles that they have personally that change their point of view. And yes, he's had experiences with his child, and he chose, unlike some people, they either choose to support their children or they choose to suppress and to think that it's wrong and to blame others for what their children is going through. Is that right or wrong? I think there's gradations to that truth. There is some things that are happening in our outside world, some very physical manifestations of why people are going through that. There's also some ways that we've been opening ourselves up to different experiences, different ways of thinking that have opened themselves up to that. And I think depending on where you lie and what the propaganda that you believe in, everybody should be able to have the right to say, whatever they want to say. This whole idea about not censoring, it depends on the agenda of the party. So you've got Republicans who are actually censoring people, but want freedom of expression depending on their agenda. And you've got Democrats are the same, and I'm just speaking very personally from the US, who are the same. They want to cancel people for saying stuff. They don't want them to call people different names. You've got, people who are, these people are ableist, or these people are neurodivergent, and these people are trans. So there's a lot of different responses to what's happening, and depending on where you fall in your spectrum of ideology, you're going to have a response to that. So is somebody right and is somebody wrong? I don't know. Where does the individual versus the group, where's the dividing line? Just like my introduction, So I'm like, okay, well, people should be able to have their own personal freedoms, but when does that affect another person, basically? And as a group, we have to survive with each other. So, and there are damaging, controversial things that people say that get other people mired into some conspiracy things that are unhealthy. So what should be censored? What shouldn't? That depends on, your ideology. What do you think? Do you see anything in his chart that makes him more conservative?
The only thing that comes to mind, but he has his son in Cancer, yeah. So generally, it's like not, yeah. So like my father is born on this sign. Yeah, he's quite a conservative person. I would put it like that. But he has he has open head. Maybe he spent too much time watching Jordan Peterson videos, something like that. So something came into his head, and then the process starts, and he thinks about the questions that actually doesn't matter for him. But he's trying to present himself like a person with a kind of position, with opinion, and with a concept, and he does it, and it doesn't look especially good or authentic. But yeah, I think he is expressing opinions that he somehow received into his mind, and he's trying
unconscious. 17,
unconscious, unconscious. So that's probably that is how I could understand it. So he received it somehow. He walked it through. But Jordan Peterson, when you mention them together, like, okay, the puzzle, the puzzle.
Because you know what, Jordan Peterson started out as a reasonable person. I actually listened to him in his earlier days, but then he became more and more. I guess what happens to people is when they become famous, sometimes, you get your bad projections and you get your good projections. And sometimes the good projections are unhealthy just as much as the bad projections. And so people, kind of react to their environment and become either exploit that environment or become like what Elon Musk says is his child was basically interfered with by the woke mind virus. But what virus does he have? He's also got his Mercury in 39.5. So it's a provocation. He needs to provoke people. And then, he's got his design moon in 24.5. He's got a lot of projection type of, but that's the 24.5 is also can be, the gate of, I don't know exactly that keynote, but it can be a gate that is highly, can be a little bit psychotic, right? That 24 individual gate can cause mental problems. That's his design moon. But you could say a lot of.
So you talk about Jordan Peterson for the moment here?
No, Elon.
Yeah, Elon, his design moon is
24.5 is his design sun.
So you mean in your so here on the chart we see like 18.5.
24.5 over here on his design moon.
Design moon?
Yeah, 24.5. You don't see it?
So Elon Musk? Are we talking about
24.5? You don't see this 24.5, his design moon?
Design moon is 18.5.
No, that's his Earth.
So sorry. Sorry. I'm sorry. Like, okay, Tanya is not functioning properly today. Sorry, people. Yeah. Okay. Of course. You're right.
Yeah.
Moon is not Earth. Don't mingle.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought this is our sun here. How could I miss it? Sorry. Again. So like, stop. Don't ask me anymore. I'm dealing with.
You done? Okay. Yeah,
But,
I mean, and to be honest, like I don't want to bring in and make all these pronouncements, good or bad, to his design, because you can read all of these things very specifically one way or the other. And even though people are like, oh, you can see things objectively in charts, you can see, the weaknesses and then the positives, but you can write the story any way that you see it. And that's depending on your perspective. And so I don't want to make him into some evil person, although, he's speaking for himself, I would say, at this moment. So nobody's really projecting what comes out of his mouth. And
talking about Elon or about
Elon?
Jordan?
Oh,
Elon.
both.
Jordan, I suppose.
Both. I mean, they're in the human design community, a lot of people are just falling over heads, love Jordan Peterson, especially the males in human design, and I'm sure love Elon Musk as well, because they think that they're speaking truth to power. And so I think it depends on your perspective. That's the thing. It's like I've seen so many different responses to people. Even the astrology community is depending on your perspective, is how you see and how you read into the symbols. No matter what you think it's objective, I don't see that at all. I see people take two different stances on things. I just don't see it as being objective.
By the way, I have a thought. I suppose it is also applicable to Elon Musk as well as to Jordan Peterson. In my experience, and of course, it's like you notice it when you observe yourself, we are aging, and aging is connected not only with our bodies, but with our souls and our minds and the quality of functioning of those.
Yeah.
And if we, for example, would try to trace the thoughts and the quality of thoughts of Elon or Jordan, the quality is the pureness of thought, the logical constructions of thoughts of them. So probably most likely their hormonal decline, let's put it like this, would be connected with the decline of their thoughts quality. And I'm talking about myself also. Yeah. Sorry?
You saying I would hate to say that about about people who are aging. I don't think everybody goes through. I mean, yes, of course, your mind. It depends on.
Understand this change. There are some bonuses in this aging. Yeah, there are some, but it's like maybe the fact that my husband is a mathematician and he was highly competitive in his early years. He was taking part in all these Olympic games in mathematics, and he was quite successful in it. But it's kind of norm there to understand that all your main achievements should be reached before you are turning 30. Just because the quality of thinking, the quality of your mind, most likely would be declining with the age. And that's kind of fact for them. And it's hard to compete in IT sphere. When the older you are, the harder is the competition, just because the speed of your thinking, the pureness of it's changing.
But I would like to counter that there have been plenty of people who at a very late age have, Einstein specifically, who have come up with the cornerstones of their achievements at a very late age too.
Yes, but this is a meta concept. These are the meta concepts. This is not the quality of processing, how many units per second you're processing, definitely less than when you were 30. But then you're able to create more, you became more creative with you, because you have to avoid all this complication. When you're young, you have a lot of energy, and you can support a pattern of thinking properly. But then this support declines, and you have to come up with ideas. And by the way, with Einstein, most likely his wife made half of the contribution, and but doesn't matter. It is quite so. I'm preparing myself for something big in my later age. No, it doesn't mean that I say like we are all dying. Like after 50, you have to prepare a place at the cemetery and so on. No. The quality, but let's be objective. The quality of thinking, the quality of memory, and some other parameters are changing. But they are already famous. They are famous, and they are used to pronounce what they feel, their thoughts. It's so important. I want to translate, to give it to the masses. No time for reflection.
Yeah, I think the problem is that we've become and it's especially a problem for emotional people like us. I've never been quick. I've never been a good memory person. And now I'm coming into the point that I'm accepting that it takes me a while to simmer on something. And I don't need to go out and make a pronouncement about something until I really think about what it is I want to say. Now, will I come up with a brilliant thing eventually? Maybe. I don't know. But I definitely think it's different styles, and in the ways that we're doing, like the immediate impulsive way that we're trying to pronounce things so quickly. Yes, I definitely think that that's an issue. And depending on what kind of drugs you are taking can also infect your thinking. Depending on what things you're taking in can affect your thinking too. So you have to be very careful about that. All right, are we ready for our judgments?
Yes!
Yay! You're up.
Okay. I hope I pronounced her name properly in English. Isadora Duncan.
Yeah.
And actually, I would be really quick on the matter. So everybody knows about her. Yeah, most likely.
No, I don't remember. Tell me.
So she was a dancer. She was a contradictional figure of the beginning of 20th century. And this free dance, a new type of movement, and he was dancing sometimes even naked, if I remember it properly. So she was kind of revolutionary in the field. And she was really like, let's put her like Sarah Bernard of that level of popularity, and a lot of scandals around her. And she had 3 kids actually out of wedlock. She was not married. So she was married only to Sergei Yesenin, the Russian poet, when she came to Russia right after the revolution, after the civil war ended. And then suddenly she met him. He was really beautiful. Yeah, physically he was extremely attractive. He had a lot of women and so on. And she met him. She was already older than 40s. So I first heard about him as a child. Just my father was telling me something like she was married to Yesenin. She fell in love with him immediately after she saw him. The only person she was married to was Sergei Yesenin, famous Russian poet who died very young. Most likely he committed suicide, but it's not clear actually. And that she died because of the accident. She was like 50 or 50, just a little bit older than 50. She wore a long scarf and she was sitting in the car and riding, and somehow she was almost decapitated by the incident because so the scarf was a really long one, and so I was impressed like a child already with this story. And she was known well all around the world with her eccentric behavior. So already when she married this Yenin, who was many years younger than her, she was considered very eccentric and partially crazy. But what I saw yesterday, actually, in the night, I had trouble sleeping just for a while, and I stumbled upon her. Again, I read Wikipedia and thought a lot about it. What I found there is like, it's unbelievable that such things are possible in our culture, but that's how it is. She had 2 children first. She had 2 kids born out of wedlock from 2 different persons. I suppose romancing and love. Both persons were in creative world. And she gave birth to both of them. So we see here the photo of her with her children. Nowhere, not a chance. I never ever, until I read this article in Wikipedia yesterday, I knew that these 2 children, there was a tragic accident, and they died together on one day with their nanny, because the car was somehow accidentally landed in the river.
Oh my
God! They were drowned. She lost her 2 children. So she was really close with her family, with her siblings and so on. But these were her children, and she lost them. And it is pronounced nowhere, almost nowhere. And she's like simply considered eccentric person who blah blah blah. After that, she was it was such a disaster for her. Like I gonna read it, and it is like it comes from her autobiography. Duncan relates that in her deep despair over the death of her children, she begged a young Italian stranger, the sculptor Romano Romanelli, to sleep with her because she was desperate for another child. She gave birth to a son on August 13, 1914, but he died shortly after birth. So that's the story of her life, actually. Of course, she was famous with her creative activities. But to pronounce eccentric and even crazy person who lost 3 kids, so like it's especially at the times when it was considered the main destination. So it is still considered the main aim of our female lives and so on. It was covered for me, at least. I don't know. It's impossible. So this is one of the center points of her life. It is important to know it. It is important to understand her. But this is not the things that we are talking about. Yeah, it's so disgusting to be honest. Yeah, change the perspective totally. So
I'm gonna have to look at her chart now that you're talking about.
Yeah, so it would be. I thought that we do not have enough time here if we would be looking at your chart, but it is definitely interesting. So I'm just I listened to this open house.
Yeah, I haven't. I know him very well. I was in his LYD course. Yeah,
and he's continuing to stay and really nice and really impressive. That's what I wanted to point out. He is living it his own way, your own authority, and so on. But when I listen to him, I know he has quite a strong impact on everyone who listens to him. But I see the knowledge living in him. I feel it. I sense it in my in my headphones, and I was pleasantly surprised. It is nice. So I suppose I would listen 1 or 2 more times just to consume these vibrations. And that's what I need. I stopped when he started to answer questions. Maybe I would listen it to the end and then we'll start anew. So almost the same way transforming like Ra. when you listen to
he's got a great voice. I think is very impactful, and I will say that he brings a lot to the table in the Living Your Design course, because it's almost like having a personal reading, because he goes over your design so much. But he's got his limitations like anybody. And he's definitely, he impacted me. I've just been putting together my Jupiter return, because you have your Jupiter return right after your Uranus opposition and Saturn opposition. I was like, they say that they bring teachers into your life during that time, and he was one of them. And it really did impact me, both positively and negatively, I think. To be fair, I think Alok is very mostly honest. He still is material, so he needs to bring in a certain amount of money. And, I thought he was going to be my teacher, and he decided to go another direction. And I was a little bit upset because he had alluded to him having another round. But, I released him, and he needs to do what's right for him. And that's good. And so I respect him a lot. And I thought his course was really good. I also took his Penta course. So there was nothing that I regret from taking his courses. He's definitely an impactful person. He's a triple split like us, and he's on the cross of consciousness like my son. So there was a lot of things about his experience that I related to. And I appreciated mostly his honesty and the ways that he stays true to himself. And that's the most important thing. You've got to stay true to yourself. So yes, he's definitely impactful.
So that's now the final part of my judgment. I had a lot. No,
this happened separately, right? I was like, is it positive? That's funny.
yeah. So I didn't know that Suzanne put Elon in the middle of the presentation. Then I noticed it only afterwards when I put my slides to it. So actually, I was quite impressed. This person full of contradictions, but that's how he rides the wave. Yeah, I definitely observe a huge and enormous need of cheap house, cheap and nachhaltig. Sorry, nachhaltig is a German word, ecologically proper. So the sustainable housing in the world, even here in Berlin, in Germany, it is terrible. For the moment, the way my life goes, the only real estate I could afford is this one. And he's starting to produce this wonderful $10,000 houses. I know that already some Chinese models of a similar quality or like in a similar direction presented on Amazon, and you can buy a house on Amazon. Yeah, like you can order it. It started already. I was waiting for it. But when Elon starts the process, we see his famous charger on the wall of the house. Doesn't matter if you have Tesla or no. Yeah, but by the way, a lot of owners of tiny houses, these small, nice homes that could be transferred to another location, they prefer Tesla cars. They install such chargers. But this tiny house movement, have you?
Yeah. I know about it. I've heard varied reactions to people. It's got its pluses and minuses. I think that depending on how they're made and how they're constructed, they can be quite limiting in some respects. So, and this looks like a storage container. It reminds me of the planes where you have to stand up, and it's just like some parts of it.
But the price is $10,000.
I get that, and you have to do it at some point.
There's a difference between tiny house and this house, and that this one is foldable, completely foldable. So the transportation, which for tiny house is quite a thing. I saw one video on YouTube when the lady, like the house was, the car was not good during the U-turn, and house simply fell Yeah, and then they have to redo it a little bit, adjust everything,
Yeah,
and
think
then
about that. If you're foldable, like how strong is it for the elements, and how leaky is it? That's what I would be concerned about.
but yeah, modern materials. I have a trust in modern materials. It is definitely possible for the moment to have good insulation with quite a thick layer of everything. Let's see. But these houses are foldable, and it means that the transportation is much easier, and you can buy second floor later. Yeah, by the way, and here in Berlin, I saw schools built in a similar technology. Not only the builders are living in such houses, yeah, near construction sites, but I saw the whole schools built that way here in Berlin. When the demand is so big, they have to build something fast, and this school stays for a few years in place with thousands children inside, with toilets, with everything, and it works. So this nice guy, which looks sometimes truly disgusting, in my personal opinion, of course, he rides another wave that is, for me personally, is really, really interesting. I see a great future for this idea, and the fact that he started to deal with it. So first of all, we see how he deals with the global problems, like with Starlinks. That there's a trouble with internet, yeah, in the world. Not everybody has access to it. So he created Starlink. The question is, who can afford $100 per month internet? But let's say,
and then
village can buy together. Yeah, one village can buy one
you
unit.
also have all these things up in the sky that are blocking our natural world. So there's pluses and minuses to all of this stuff. I know you and I disagree on some of the new things.
Could you imagine what possibilities it opens to the poor people in Africa, for example?
Yeah, I mean, there's.
Could you imagine, or poor people somewhere in Afghanistan, or poor ladies?
It's going to be necessary.
They have some internet in their
we're
house.
becoming too many people, and there's the nature. We're killing our natural world, and AI is coming out and basically decimating our water supply. So yeah, there's pluses and minuses to all of this. We definitely have to adapt to the new world and figure out solutions. So yeah, there's pluses and minuses to it.
Yeah, and mostly. So let's see how it develops. But the fact that he invests some energy and he brings some publicity to this segment, then let's hope that other providers would come and the market would form itself. And finally, for example, here in Germany, there are no law regulations in place for this. And as usual, Germany is falling behind just because they need to be sure that it is legal. No, you cannot put a house like this. It all has to be checked, and it takes 5 years at least, and so on. So like a German way to do things. So anyway, we have a lot of time to wait.
There's smart things to the Germans and the way that they do things. So yeah, there's pluses and minuses to everything.
Yes.
Oh my God. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to bring some more attention to this book that I read. She's actually done some amazing work on the tarot as well. The tarot. She's just an amazing writer of historical information. I haven't even read through all of her book in detail, but it's a great book. Her name is Benabel Wynn. And so if you really wanted to explore the I Ching in more detail, this is a great book to start. And then Robin Armstrong as well, I discovered when I was trying to research the I Ching, and then I was like, oh, he had these presentations, and I got deeper and deeper. There's some free websites, but he wrote a book in like the 70s. He's from Canada as well, under a pseudonym. And then he came out in 2011. I think this was written or published in 2011. He's got several things in this book, which is very interesting about the ways that he lays over the I Ching with the astrology in his own perspective of the seasonal cycles. And he makes a very good case for it. And I've been experimenting with it, and it makes a lot of sense to me from the astrological perspective, especially our nodes, because I was like, I always had this weird feeling about our North Node being in Sagittarius, and it mentions detail. And that's where it really got me. I was like, of course it's not detail. Sag is very expanding and not detail oriented. Gemini is detail oriented. But in a way, the way that I've started to see the ways that Ra developed his system, especially with the I Ching, because he manipulated the astrological wheel by creating the profiles that he created, and because of the ways that they didn't match up, because there's more lines in the hexagram than there were degrees in the wheel. And so I think he was trying to figure that out at some point. But the ways that Robin deals with it is he has basically the way that I see that Ra did it was through the G center. There's the specific fixed there's the seasonal fixed crosses that he has used and tied them to degrees, like the 1 line and the 2 line. But the ways that Robin deals with it is he makes them neutral, because they're not tied to anything. They're what do you call them? The equinoxes. They're neutral. And so that's the way that he deals with it. And the ways that he's outlining this is very compelling. I wanted to read something of his. Let's see. That kind of speaks to this. Oh, there was a couple of things that I wanted to read out, because I thought this was very interesting. If you are blaming others for your circumstances, you are not looking in the right direction or way. To find true understanding, one needs to look up to the heavens. If in doing so, one has remorse for one's own shortcomings and deviations, no one else will be blamed. In the hexagrams or any cycles, there are times of great darkness or little light. When there is much receptivity, yielding, and seeming weakness, there are also times of great light or little darkness. When there is much creativity, firmness, and seeming strength, this is a natural part of any cycle. From the greatest darkness, light increases. From the greatest light, darkness increases. Therefore, the appended judgments speak of danger or safety. In phases, we likewise become very strong and firm, and very weak and yielding. Extremes are not balanced and cannot be maintained for long. When it is time for change, adjustment is required, or one will fall from the correct balance and the way will be lost. That's just one little thing. I have a whole bunch of other quotes from him, but what I would say from his perspective, he says the I Ching is change, and basically the change happens in the cycles. And what I see Ra has done is he, in his own way, has tried to demonstrate the change in us in the system. And that's where the other profiles and the 88 degrees comes from, because he wants to demonstrate the change in us. So there's a lot of truth, I think, in harmonics and the ways that we look at these different systems. I see it. And people have their different perspectives. Some people are very fixed in the ways that they see themselves, like I said. And for me, I'm like, oh, I see that truth. Oh, I see that truth. Oh, I see that truth. And it's so vast that there's so many different ways to look at these things, that there is no one truth in one system. That's my conclusion to things. But it definitely didn't, can't throw out the human design system at first. I was like, if this is true, then the human design system is false, but I still can't throw it out. And so I'm just going to say, well, it's a different way to look at everything. And there's no one single source of truth.
But definitely thanks to you, this perspective, and that this possibility to go out from human design discourse and see what's outside, or to see it from the other corner. It's a nice thing, even though I would say, like, more than human design, nothing, no teaching in this world brought more to me than human design. Maybe astrology is bringing, like, approaching to this level. But still, but it's nice the possibility to see from the other point. Yeah, it's great. I would put these books on my list. The question is how soon I will get to them. Yeah, but still,
he had this book that it's basically a whole bunch of PDFs, but there's so much information, and it was a bunch of money. But I invested in it because he has some free stuff on his website, and I was just like, you know what, this guy, this is his work. It is his life's work. And I really haven't, I'd like to have him on at some point, because he's developed all of these things, music and all sorts of things, a real artist. And the work is amazing, but it's from its own contemplative perspective. So it's not a money-making thing. He did have his own software at some point, but it's not as practical as Ra put out. And Ra, it took a long time for Ra's system to actually get somewhere, and that was his work, and he sold it. That's the only reason why it's so it's gained so much popularity, because there are a lot of people in the astrology community that create software, and if you don't have the backing, or you don't have something else that drives it forward, it doesn't go anywhere. Like Robbins, I was like, well, I really wish that he had the software so I could play around with it. But in some senses, there's some people who take things further than others. And Ra did sell his, and people like go, oh, well, he sold the capitalist people that ruined it. But really, it's his legacy. And now it's used by so many different people. So is that bad?
It's a life. Yeah, like this is the other logic, the way that huge, one of the biggest just indoor festivals in the world, team taught us in 2005, 2006. Like, if you want to have a good festival, you have to put it on wheels. What is wheels? Like, it should be commercially effective.
Yeah.
To stay alive for years. And this was told by the people who has their festival living 30 plus years. Yeah. And Ram managed to do it.
Yeah. I mean, he's brilliant.
Yeah, his brilliance here, actually. Outside the fact that he survived for Revelation.
I think he made the system for himself, to be honest. And when I was reflecting on the motivations and stuff, I was like, yeah, it's totally, it's like therapy for me, anyway, the hope motivation, because I can be so cynical. You know, it's almost like, oh, this is the frame of mind that feels the best, and people have the best frequency from me, because it's my state of mind that I need to connect more. So when I look at Ra and how he's, that he, from his astrology chart to his human design chart, I was like, he built this for himself. And it was the way to help him move forward in life after his Uranus opposition. That's how I see it. But everybody has a perspective.
Yeah, that's a great team. So I think we're done for today.
We're done. We're over. We're cooked.
We're cooked. Oh, yeah, not bad.
Compliment. Say your ciao cacao.
Yeah. So ciao cacao, everybody, and thanks for listening.
Yes, we'll see you later. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Next time.